Hey guys, time for that summary of Chapter 6. I didn't even realize I had my headphones in for that last one until I played it back and realized how much of a dork I looked like. So, yeah, whatever, it is what it is. So, here we go, Chapter 6. This one is, will the real Jay Gatsby please stand up? At the beginning of this chapter, Nick finds out who Jay Gatsby really is. Now, he doesn't find this stuff out until later in the story, but he wants us to know now who Jay Gatsby really is. Apparently, it's important for Chapter 6. Now, in this chapter, we find out Jay Gatsby is actually a kid by the name of James Gatz. James Gatz is the son of poor farmers from a small town in North Dakota. He created the idea of who Jay Gatsby would be in his own mind. It's like the pictures, the dreams that you have as a teenager of who you're going to be when you grow up. Mega rich NBA player living in a big mansion, cars, fly honeys all over the place, series, those kinds of things. That's the Jay Gatsby that James Gatz built in his head. And he had this rough idea of who he was, and he felt like the world didn't recognize the potential, the excitement, who Jay Gatsby could be. He went to St. Olaf College for about 2 weeks, but he was going to have to work as a janitor to pay his way through, and he was infuriated they couldn't see that working as a janitor was beneath him, so he left. He drifted from job to job, from girl to girl, until he met a guy by the name of Dan Cody. Now, Dan Cody was an ultra-rich guy. He had his own yacht out here on Lake Superior, and he had made and lost several fortunes, and he was a drunk, and he had been taken advantage of several different times because of his drunkenness. And from that point forward, Gatsby swore that he would never be so drunk that he let people take advantage of him. Now, when Dan Cody died, he left Jay Gatsby $25,000, but he never got a chance to claim the money because Cody's family used tricks of the legal trade to keep him from getting the money. But Dan Cody did leave him with what Nick refers to as a singular education. He helped take the insubstantial character of Jay Gatsby into a man. So Dan Cody is the one who helped create the Jay Gatsby that we know today. And at the beginning of Chapter 6, Gatsby and Nick are hanging out on the beach, and Tom rides up with two of his friends, and they're making casual conversation, and Gatsby says, "Oh yeah, we've met." Tom says, "Oh, that's right. You were at lunch with Nick a couple of weeks ago." And Gatsby says, "That's right. I know your wife." And Tom's like, "Oh, really? Is that so?" And Gatsby was saying in a not so subtle way, he's like, "I'm gonna steal your wife." And Tom heard exactly what he said and said, "That's not gonna happen." So Gatsby invites them all to his party, and Tom shows up with Nick and Daisy. They are all there at Gatsby's party. And Gatsby tries to impress Daisy and run Tom down at every turn. Gatsby continues to point out all of these wonderful, beautiful people, and again introduces Tom as the polo player every time he has to introduce Tom to someone. And at one point, Tom's like, "I think I'm going to go have dinner with these people. They seem pretty interesting." And Daisy says, "Sure. And here's my little gold pencil, too, just in case you want to take down anybody's address." So people just keep insulting Tom just right and left. So Daisy and Gatsby end up sneaking off together. They share a dance, and then they sneak off together for a while. And Daisy is actually very offended by this lifestyle, by everything that's going on over here. She is old money. She is sophisticated. She's offended by all of this stuff. She's like, so many people show up that were never invited, and they simply force their way in, and he's too polite to object. And he says, and Tom says, I wonder where he made all his money. And Nick says, and Daisy says, well, he has drugstores. He owns a bunch of drugstores. And that's how he made his money, is through those drugstores. And guys, you got to remember, this is a time when drugstores had soda fountains and you could pick up magazines. It was kind of like a modern day convenience store. And Tom says, drugstores, huh? Well, I think I'm just going to have to try to find out. And Gatsby says to Nick at the end of the party, he's like, she didn't like it. Nick says, oh, she had a fine time. He says, no, she didn't like it. And he was right. Page 115. But the rest offended her, and arguably because it wasn't a gesture but an emotion. She was appalled by West Egg, this unprecedented place that Broadway had begotten upon a Long Island fishing village. Appalled by its raw vigor that chafed under the old euphemisms, and by the too obtrusive fate that herded its inhabitants along a shortcut from nothing to nothing. She saw something awful in the very simplicity, and she failed to understand. So Daisy doesn't like these big parties. She doesn't like the lifestyle that Gatsby lives. She doesn't like that people take advantage of him and his good nature. And she's also very offended by this idea of old money mixing so much with new money. She sees this place as just appalling. Now, Gatsby here, at the end of the party, does not understand how things have changed. I feel far away from her, he said. It's hard to make her understand. Gatsby wants one very simple thing from Daisy. He wanted nothing less of Daisy than she should go to Tom and say, I never loved you. After she had obliterated 3 years with that sentence, they could decide upon the more practical measures to be taken. One of them was that after she was free, they were to go back to Louisville and be married from her house, just as if it were 5 years ago. Nick says, I wouldn't ask too much of her. You can't repeat the past. And this is where we see Gatsby's one fatal flaw. He says, can't repeat the past? Well, of course you can. He thinks it's a very simple matter, that if she just says 4 little words, I never loved you, then suddenly everything is going to be different. And he doesn't understand how much people have changed. So that ends chapter 6. Chapter 7? Chapter 7 is where it all comes to a head, guys. Love chapter 7. We'll see you then.